to come to America for a better life. That is what this country was based off of. That is what this country was built off of. We are a country of immigrants, by immigrants, for immigrants.
I want to talk with you about a number of subjects that directly affect the future of the United States.
Hi, howdy, folks. It's your old pal Moore here. Apologies, I'm not very good at social media. So, this conversation was recorded at the end of last year, a little bit after Trump's general speech with my pal Corbin here. Now, I think this is a very important conversation because Corbin was that prime demographic of youngin that went for Trump back in his younger days and would have voted for Trump had he been of age. It's that demographic of Gen Z folks that surprisingly swung towards Republicans in the last election when you saw a shift in how younger people tend to vote. I think it's a good conversation to get kind of the mentality of that kind of folk and where they're actually at nowadays. I do want to give an update. Since then, Corbin and I obviously still talk off and on, and he has become, for lack of a better term, increasingly distraught and a little blue-pilled, I'll say, over some of the things happening in Minneapolis and over the ICE protest, including feeling much greater hesitation on joining law enforcement in his later parts of his career. So, good conversation. I hope y'all enjoy it. Please, if you guys wouldn't mind giving me a like and subscribe, and I do appreciate y'all taking your time to give us a view. Thank you.
Hey, howdy, folks. Welcome to the Fireside Yaps. Here again today with a good buddy of mine. I'm going to have to find out more synonyms for friends because every single chat so far has been a take on the word friend or amigo. So, folks, this is my friend from work. His name is Corbin. Corbin, please go ahead and introduce yourself. Talk about where you're from, your general political leanings, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, so I am from the mountains in America, western slope. Um,
Most specific,
I
Colorado. We don't have to. We're not going to dox you by saying the state.
yeah, I am from Colorado. I'm more independent. I'm more independent than most. I am right leaning. I'm a pretty big gun nut. Um, and a big thing about me is I did support our current president up until January 6th of 2021.
Yes. So to clarify, because I always like to make information, when you say supported, you obviously didn't get a chance to vote for Donald Trump because you were 17 or so at
Yeah,
that
yeah.
election. Okay. So if you had been at the age of 18, would you have voted for Donald Trump in 2020?
Yeah, I would have.
What?
Uh,
Why is that? What would have made you want to vote for him back then?
well, specifically, I don't know if you know much about Colorado, but it's a very blue state. I thought, something different, something. I've grown up surrounded by Democrats. And everything I've done, especially in school, it was, it wasn't forced upon us, but you know how certain people are. I didn't necessarily agree with a lot of things that peers and teachers and coworkers said, especially a lot of them being Democrats. So yeah, the only Republican guy that was running was or that I knew was Trump, obviously. So yeah, I would have voted for him prior January 6th.
So we've talked a lot, and you've talked to me about that too. And obviously, like I don't consider myself a Democrat, but I'm a registered member of the party because I like to vote in the primaries. Do you think that the way I have engaged you at all has been equivalent to what you had growing up?
No, no. I mean, growing up, it was being a Republican or hell, being an independent where I'm from, is not real common. So it was more in the okay, this is how I see the adults talking because obviously growing up I wasn't of voting age, but this is how I see the adults talking to each other. They're the ones of an authority over me, so this is what I should think. I don't really agree with that, but
And
you
now,
know,
when so like the adults, are you talking about like your parents? Well, your parents don't actually lean that conservative, from what I recall. But were you talking about like the adults in general being more Democratic?
yeah.
Okay.
Adults in general, I worked a very, as you know, I worked a very adult heavy job
Yeah. So
from a young age.
for those of the in the audience that are listening today, Corbin here is what I might call a rich little fuck. He came from a pretty privileged lifestyle, which we're not holding against him. We just shit on him a little bit, and there's
Just a
nothing
little
wrong with
bit.
that. He's worked hard and he's finding his way in the world. He was a little ignorant towards certain things, but he's getting
Yeah, I
better.
guess some people don't have two living rooms, but
Yeah, two living rooms would have been. I would have loved a singular living room where I was growing up on places. But what? Go ahead. What was your first job? Out of curiosity.
I worked at one of the largest ski resorts in the world.
Right. And how much did you get? How old were you, and how much did you get paid at that job?
Um, I started whenever I was 14, the legal working age in Colorado, and I was making more than a teacher.
So upwards of like $15, $20 almost.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. My first job, I was making 750, and that was considered good.
Yeah, I think when I started it was 12, 12 to 13. But we are in a very high or what's the word I'm looking for?
Minimum wage.
Everything's really expensive.
Yeah. Cost of living state makes sense.
Yeah.
I know when I worked part time in California for a little bit, I was making, I think at that time, $14 or $15 an hour. But obviously, California's higher minimum wage as well. And by the time you were 17 or 18, how much were you making on average about an hour?
Oh, it's a good question. It's been a while. I don't quite remember, but
You
it
were
was pretty up there
you were making a lot for somebody that had not.
compared to anybody else in my shoes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So the thing I'm very thankful is obviously our job has presented you and even myself, a lot of people, the opportunities to see things that they normally wouldn't, especially in their socioeconomic class. So, do you think that your job, getting to see more people out there, has kind of, I won't say humbled you, but given you a bit more experience that, yeah, not every American has two living rooms?
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, I would say humbled. Especially through the entry level of what we do. Really getting to connect with people and understanding, hey, this is not, not everybody has their own car, not everybody has multiple living rooms.
I think I'm gonna throw you under the bus for this, but the conversation we had with a mutual friend of ours, where you saw a story online and you asked, it was about a person who was walking a long distance to go to work. They got like somebody bought them a car or something along that line, and you were asked like, why didn't they just drive to work? I don't understand. And we had to stop and explain to you like, not everybody can afford a car. You're like, well,
Which
that is
it sounds dystopian to hear now, but
it's been like that. It's everybody comes from different backgrounds and whatnot, and have always been a not a guarantee for every American. So that's what we're dealing with Corbin here. I think he exists in a very, we'll say, fun demographic of people, especially because if you look online nowadays, a lot of people in your demographic are tending to swing towards this alt-right Nick Fuentes sort of thing. You have these fellers who come from fairly privileged positions who are like, Nick Fuentes, right?
I do not.
Don't. Okay.
Care to fill me in?
So you
Is he the crazy guy I've been seeing on
probably.
Instagram that says a lot of racial slurs?
Yeah, that's probably it.
That's the guy.
Nick Fuentes recently did an interview with Tucker Carlson, who I know you know Tucker Carlson, right?
I know who that is. Yeah.
He's always been in kind of the peripheral. He's been a very far right uh, provocateur, whatever you want to say it. His whole shtick is like, yeah, he is a self-described Nazi at times. He defends Hitler a lot. He uses racial ideology to defend his points, which is obviously bullshit.
Now, how can you be a Nazi at times, not Nazi all the time?
It's one of those things where, and I've talked to you about this before, where you go, if you have ever studied or read how the KKK or neo Nazis today disseminate information, they do this thing like with plausible deniability. It's not about killing the Jews or committing another Holocaust. It's about defending the purity of their particular racial demographic. It's easier to say I want to defend my wife and kids against these Neanderthals than it is to actually describe what they're trying to do, which is, Nazi shit.
Genocide.
Yeah, genocide. So Nick Fuentes is kind of one of those people where, I could point to a singular quote he makes, and you see this on Instagram a lot, especially nowadays, where you have these people who are like, we've been lied to about what Adolf Hitler said. He was actually just defending Germans and talking about how good Germany is for Germans. and they
Which
don't.
is an insane statement, as I've been to the camps.
Yeah. We it's one of those things where if you take, I love Germany. I want Germans to be happy in Germany, which I'm sure we could probably find a quote of Hitler saying somewhere, and just take that quote and run with it. Then yeah, I can't fault the guy. But it's in the totality of the circumstances that you see where these ideological processes come from. I could take
Mhm.
one quote from, not to compare Donald Trump directly to Hitler, but I could take one quote from Donald Trump and be like, oh, that guy brings up a good point. That seems a pretty smart thing to say. We should elect him president. And then I could look at the totality of what he says in a speech or his entire presidency, and I'm like, he's insane. It's cherry picking. It's cherry picking. We've talked about that a lot. So with Nick Fuentes especially, he and you said you've seen him. What have you seen him say exactly?
I I want to keep your channel monetized,
We're
but
not going to be monetized. Don't worry.
I've seen him say a lot of things that would get most people in trouble, lose jobs, etc., etc. I have heard. I haven't. Obviously, I'm not very political, so I haven't really seen too much of him. Just the memes, but I've heard people say he's very anti-Semitic. Um,
Yeah.
that is the case.
You know Ben Shapiro, right?
Yes, I do.
Well, Ben Shapiro, right now, if you look, especially online, Ben Shapiro has been going against Nick Fuentes and Tucker Carlson because he is a very anti-Semitic, and Ben Shapiro is a big supporter of Israel. He is also Jewish as well. So you are perfectly in that demographic where if you were engaged in politics online a little bit more, they would scoop you up immediately. You like when we talked about it, and there were two conversations that I wanna speak on that we had. One of the conversations that you brought up was, as you kind of mentioned earlier, you were the area you grew up. You ran into a lot of, we'll describe them as annoying liberals, right? Like you
Yes,
said,
very much so.
you said you had some like queer people or queer peers in your area that were kind of pushing you a little bit when you didn't fully subscribe, or I don't want to say.
I wouldn't say pushing, me as an individual, but you know, going through multiple name changes throughout the course of a year, just like the whole, I didn't believe me, nothing wrong
Yeah.
with how you feel, how you identify, but it's not for me, man.
No, I
Like
get
I
it can get annoying sometimes, and like I've been a big I don't want to say critic, but like I have a lot of queer friends, and I've had good discussions about it. But I think the big thing is that what you see, especially when you are a young teenager, where everything is amplified to 100 because of hormones and whatnot, and then what you see when you go online and you see all of that reinforced with like thousands of memes, that kind of
oh yeah.
compounds on itself, and it creates
That
this.
also helps like with what we're doing like here. I met a lot of queer people here and people that identify every which way, and it's not nearly like it was back home, and they're respectable. They are my friends. I am,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, again, like it's one of those things where if I have those feelings reinforced and I have them with this group of people that want to indoctrinate me further, that's why again I'm very thankful because of my experience growing up. I was like heavily conservative, but I know they're not, most of them aren't bad people. But when you get to these
Mhm.
folks online, the ones that are pushing the narrative, the ones that are actually pushing the policy, that's where we get to, oh, hey, these folks don't know what they're voting for because they are clearly voting for us to do all these bad things. So you said you used to be a supporter of Donald Trump. What was the big thing that changed that for you?
Yeah, so I think I mentioned January 6th. I am a very big supporter of police and law enforcement, and with that, I truly do believe that everybody has the right to be treated equal. With that being said, what we saw at the January 6th at the Capitol, if it were any other demographic of people, they would have been gunned down on the steps.
Yeah. Yeah.
If it was anybody that looked different from the white man carrying an American flag, they would have been shot dead on the steps of those capitals. And it would have been a very, very not pretty event. So the fact that it initiated at, I believe, I have notes here. Um, it the crowd started swelling outside the Capitol at 12:53 in the morning, 12:53 around lunchtime, and it took multiple hours for the president at the time to do anything about it. Cops were getting assaulted, pushed through, and it finally reached a boiling point when the Air Force female, what was her name?
I forget her name. She was an Air Force veteran. I try to forget her name because I just like her. She was a former military police officer, and at a certain point, I think she actually voted for Barack Obama too. Oh, Ashley Babbitt. That was her name, Ashley Babbitt.
Yeah, it kind of it boiled over whenever they tried to breach the Senate floor. Was it the House?
It was this. It was in the hallway, I think, before the Senate. No. They got to the Senate. They never actually got to the House. So it would have been in the, I think, in the hallway where the lawmakers actually were headed. I don't think.
Where they were attempting to evacuate.
Yeah.
Secret Service shot and killed her.
Yeah. I've on January 6th, I've engaged in some conversations online with folks. Nothing that I put to a podcast format yet because I want to get to know these people a little bit more. But a lot of people have been kind of brainwashed, especially by the right-wing talking points about January 6th. Have you seen any of those talking points brought up, maybe in your more conservative circles?
Not that I've heard, other than the, it wasn't that bad. It wasn't that bad. They're overplaying it, but multiple police officers were killed.
Yeah.
Civilians were killed. There was a shootout where we make the laws.
Yeah.
That sounds pretty bad to me.
I think it's always important to be factual with these. So there was, as far as I know, one law enforcement death that was tied to the Capitol riot, and that the individual there was sprayed with bear spray or
Mace.
Yeah, and did die several hours later. There were a couple of that one's probably going to get demonetized, but there were a couple of self-inflicted deaths from some of the officers that,
and they're still ongoing.
Yeah, family members associated with the attack on the Capitol. I think it's always better, but I think there were 2 or 3 civilians that died on that during that attack. One of the things that I always see was like, oh, it wasn't that bad, and the officer should actually be held accountable. One individual who I had a conversation with, what he said was there was a woman who was beat by an officer and then died on the scene because she couldn't get medical attention, and the officer didn't provide medical attention. And we looked up that video together, and what exactly happened is that the Twitter accounts that were saying this police officer deserves to get put to the chair because he's beating this American patriot. There's an entire crowd of people coming at him. He swings into the crowd, and that's all it shows on this Twitter account. And if you show like the full clip of what's happening, you have the entire crowd coming at him. He swings at a person who was closest to him. She goes down, and he can't provide medical attention. He can't do anything. But they are cherry picking. They are cherry picking that whole thing just to give themselves the most reasonable outcome on this. And
mind you, these are the guys that put the gallows in front of the Capitol to hang Mike Pence for not overturning a legitimate election.
And that is the point in time where I never will ever again vote for a Republican. Like I was willing to vote for a conservative if the Democratic candidate was awful, not after January 6th. And the fact that they're just underplaying that. What do you feel? Because obviously, like you had an opinion on immigration, and a big thing about immigration is always, we need to follow the laws, and I can't argue with needing to follow the laws because it's a good argument to have. But how do you feel about the dichotomy, the hypocrisy of us forcing the brown people to follow the laws, but Donald Trump and all of his little cohorts can get away with it?
Well, I mean, we shouldn't have allowed a felon to run for presidency, but who am I to say that? Just an American citizen. But in terms of immigration, I'm all for people leaving their shit situations to come to America for a better life. That is what this country was based off of. That is what this country was built off of. We are a country of immigrants, by immigrants, for immigrants. However,
I'm so proud of you, bud.
We follow laws here. We do not stone people. We do not rape. We do not murder. We do not steal.
Yeah.
If you are planning on coming from your country to here and plan on raping, murdering, or stealing, absolutely you should get deported. You should get sent back to where you were from. You should not be allowed to come back. But if you want to come to America to make your life better, to work, to provide for your family, you absolutely should. And I think that is something that should be held at the highest level. If we are all the way back 1776, colonists, immigration,
Yep.
colonies. We weren't from here.
So you bring up a good point, and this is talked about in politics a lot, and obviously nobody disagrees with what you said. If somebody comes over here commits heinous crimes, they should be deported and not allowed to come back to the country. No politician, no activist either side of the aisle is going to argue that. From your opinion, from what you see, because obviously, and I'm very proud of you for this, you've done a little bit more research than when we first started talking. What do you think is the reason people have this immediate gut reaction of, perception, I should say, about immigrants when they come here? Do you think that might be a weaponized opinion on certain things? I'll give you kind of a leading question, I realize, but why do you think the opinion of the politicians, like, oh, you need to immediately deport all the criminals, is the reaction?
I mean, like any politician ever, I'm sure they have an agenda. I'm sure they have what they want to have happen. Is it being weaponized? Absolutely. As is everything that is happening. I don't think, little Jose should be sent back to El Salvador for stealing a Snickers bar, or we should send the ICE door to door to knock and see who has papers and who doesn't, or pull people out of their vehicles without a warrant to see if they are American citizens or not and detain them without cause.
Did you see that the Supreme Court ruled recently that they can allow essentially racial profiling as long as it's given in other contexts? So I can't arrest you for just being Hispanic. But I can arrest you for being Hispanic and being at Home Depot. They've loosened the
So
ability.
2 + 2 = 4 on that one. I see.
Yes, they've loosened the ability for ICE officers because, like, they have already they deported an American veteran recently. And when I edit this, I'll make sure I put up the web page. They deported a veteran recently who was tried and charged with attempted murder. What happened is he was an Iraq or Afghanistan war veteran who was suffering PTSD and did injure somebody through a firearm incident, and was in jail. And the second he was released from jail and served his time in prison, he was deported. Now, a big, if you're conservative, it's
Sounds like double jeopardy, doesn't it?
kinda, in my opinion, it's to me, you especially after Iraq and Afghanistan, you have a lot of veterans who have suffered heavily from PTSD, and obviously, if you commit murder, you attempt to commit murder, and that's bad. But we have
If you
fundamentally,
spent your whole life murdering, or not murdering, but
yeah,
dropping ordnance on
yeah.
fighters and going door to door and doing all those things, that's gonna mess with you.
It is, and I think that especially because I'm like a big proponent of the criminal justice system, him getting deported after that fact is purely just the Trump administration trying to like boost up their numbers. We deported an attempted murderer, despite the fact that he served the country, he sacrificed years of his life and is now permanently harmed from his service. That is one of those things that continues to be a major chagrin for me. And he ain't the first one. We've deported veterans before. This particular one was actually a Purple Heart recipient, so he literally took a freaking bullet, and that's how we treated him. And I've been telling
That's
people
ridiculous.
to kind of circle back around some of our other conversations, but I've told people is that if you look at history, if you look at what's been done before, this always ends up hurting people that it shouldn't have to. And so what I think I wanted to ask is who did you vote, and please do share with folks the joke you made. Who did you vote for in the 2024 election?
Well, we voted for Kennedy, or more so, the worm in Kennedy's head.
The worm McKinney said. Oh, I thought you were gonna share the Jimmy Carter joke you made. Darn.
Oh no, I mean, well, that one was the write-in, Jimmy Carter, because
Yeah.
he ain't leaving on his terms, he's leaving on mine.
So, out of curiosity, do you want to talk about Kennedy and his actions in the administration at all? Because I know you were being a bit more of an independent libertarian minded feller. You were kind of leaning more towards Kennedy. I know there were things you didn't like about Kamala Harris, but why? What do you think he's been like in the administration, or have you followed that too much?
I haven't followed him. The second that the Trump administration was able to buy him out, I realized, he's probably not as independent as he says if he's just gonna go to the highest bidder.
Yeah, that's yeah. Kennedy's been a shithead for a while.
All I know is he's trying to or telling us that Tylenol makes people autistic.
No, it's worse.
And oh, it's worse.
It's so much worse. He attempted to say, based off one study where the publishers of that study said that their findings were inconclusive, that there is the potential for Tylenol to be the cause of autism if women take it in the womb. And then the courts, when they ruled on that study prior to this administration making that announcement, the courts were like, this is a study is not conclusive towards scientific evidence. So they literally had to take a court non approved study and twist it in such a way that it fit their narrative. And now you have Kennedy out there saying there is not conclusive evidence of Tylenol causing autism. And the entire time they're talking about it, for months, they're saying we're going to have the cause of autism by September. So of course they have to bring out something because it's September and they haven't said anything about it. So they send out the headline. Hey, here you go, big flashy letters, and then, Lord behold, nothing happens about it.
Oh, because they're so smart about health, they withdrew from the WHO within 18 days of being in office, among other things. This presidency did more in its first 18 days in office than any other presidency ever. In the first 18 days, he, quote, ended DEI, removed trans troops from the military, bans trans athletes in sports, made it so that only male and female are the recognized genders, brought back the death penalty, withdrew from the WHO, and raised tariffs all across the board tenfold.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right about most of that. So I'm curious then, what do you feel? How do you feel? Oh Lord, you brought up a lot. And there's a lot of good questions I want to get to. What? Let's talk about real quick. Let's talk about how you felt about his whole speech to the generals recently.
Huh. Yeah, you don't really haven't seen that one since about 1945 of a minister of war, sorry, secretary of whatever, bringing all of its high-ranking generals into one room to tell us this is how we're gonna do it, and if you don't like it, you can leave. That doesn't leave a great taste in a lot of people's mouths.
No.
And then having Trump come in there like he's a guest speaker on a TED Talk, you know,
Yeah. Are
yeah.
you, and for listeners at home who maybe watched a few of my episodes, Corbin was the one that sent me that text message. How do you feel about the totality of the Trump administration? Like, he's done a lot. But the thing I
Yeah.
reiterate to people, especially those that are nervous, is that while on paper he signed a lot of crap, it's the actual actions he's been able to do. Like, first 20 days in office, one of the first things he did was remove birthright citizenship, which is unconstitutional fundamentally. But nothing actually happened with that. It kind of got stuck in the courts, and they're still fighting it out right now. Are you still worried about what he's on paper trying to do, or do you think there's going to be? Because the thing I always like to talk to you about is you were of the opinion that it wasn't going to be that bad when he first
Yeah,
got
and then
elected.
18 days later, we've done more and removed more and brought more to the hatching or chopping block than anybody in recent history.
Yeah, and it's very very concerning, especially to a lot of people, especially the people that like formerly supported Trump. So I'm curious now, what is your plan voting going on into the future?
Well, if he's on this ballot, that's not gonna be pretty. Um, you know, Probably don't think someone should run for 3 terms.
You would think.
Might just be me. But I kind of listen to what the Constitution and all that says. What do I know? Like I said, I'm just a American citizen. I don't know anything according to them. But yeah, voting. I'm voting for not a Republican.
Would you say what would it take for you to again vote for the Republican Party on any ballot, be it governor, state election, or anybody in Congress?
I've, you know, someone who is not insane and pushing casket. Um, that would be ideal. I want someone that I can agree with. Because, like I said, I am very. I'm pro a lot of things. My views, I say, are I'm pro Second Amendment. I am pro choice, pro voting, pro immigration. Um, but you can't. It's a double-edged sword with a lot of those things. You can't have one without the other, and there's certain things that I am willing to look past on certain candidates more than others. But for a Republican specifically, they would need to, you know, ideally not support this current administration, not be a what's the word I'm looking for?
Fascist?
Yeah, that's the one. Um, just the way Republicans and Democrats used to be back before me, whenever it was civil.
Yeah.
That's what I want.
Do
I
you
want the
think?
person that I can relate to the most. I don't want some billionaire that's sucking face with Elon Musk and playing golf in places that I'll never be able to get to and buying jets from the Qataris. I want
Not even
someone
buying. He
who
got a gift for a jet.
oh, my bad. Um, I want someone who grew up like I did. I want someone who,
Is
maybe I actually do very much intend on running in Colorado whenever I get back.
No, no, it's always good to and I will eventually make a video that more people need to run for office. Do you
More
think?
young people need to run for office. That's
Oh,
what I want to
especially.
vote for. I want to vote for somebody who is my age,
Yeah.
my tax bracket, my experience.
Oh,
I don't want
maybe a
some,
little lower than your tax bracket.
maybe yours.
There you go.
Um, but someone who I can relate to. I can't relate to a billionaire. I can't relate to all these, warmongering yes men. I want someone who will be like, maybe we shouldn't send a bunch of Tomahawk cruise missiles to Israel.
Do you
Maybe
think
we
then?
shouldn't go carry out strikes on nuclear facilities with American stealth technology. Maybe we should just, you know, keep to ourselves. I don't know.
Yeah.
Spitballing here.
Now, do you think then that like because what you described is how I would describe Tim Waltz to some people. Do you think Tim Waltz would be somebody that you would vote for going into the future?
Yeah, I didn't have a problem with him this election. He from I didn't do much research on him, but from what I read about him, he did more in the military than our current Secretary of Defense.
Yeah. Would you?
Um,
Because one of the things you mentioned that I keep reiterating to people is like not voting for billionaires. So if you were to look at this last election between Kamala Harris, Tim Waltz, and J.D. Vance and Donald Trump, who do you think were the poorer of the presidential candidates?
oh, Waltz for sure.
Well, Waltz and Kamala Harris. She actually, well, she's worth I think over $1 million. A lot of that money is not tied up into stocks and higher investments, whereas J.D. Vance and Donald Trump, who had the whole crypto coin BS, they're worth several $1 million more. And one of the things I keep reiterating is like not just the presidency, but the administration as a whole, from the different secretaries of different cabinet positions, are all worth billions of dollars. He had
That's
Elon.
not how it should be, man. Like that's
No, this.
I you should not be so rich that your decisions like man these cabinet members that are making these choices regarding people's lives,
Yeah.
whether or not, for the recently the government shutdown, we're making decisions that are keeping food out of people's mouths. We are specifically, like, not, I'm not saying specifically, but we kept the government closed for the longest it's ever been closed ever
Hmm.
to do what exactly? What was accomplished?
Well, do you want me to explain that, or do you already have your opinion made for it?
I mean, I know that it was no one was innocent
Yeah.
in what happened.
No, yeah.
It was the Democrats making a power play and the Republicans wanting them to hold over on certain healthcare bills that they thought affected illegal immigrants that really just affected people in rural communities.
Yep. That's exactly what it is. And
And
the
I'm from a rural community by definition, so they are delaying healthcare to my people,
No, they're not just delaying healthcare. They are specifically taking away the healthcare benefits you have. And it's,
removing it.
yeah. So one of the things that I tell people a lot is one, the bills that they have removed funding for, specifically the Affordable Care Act or Obamacare, does not go to people who don't have a Social Security number. Does not go to illegal aliens, but they are removing that funding because they have demonized these programs so much that they are socialism for transgender kids to get their dicks chopped off. That's literally all they freaking talk about.
Yeah, and the thing is, yeah, sure, maybe on a onesie twosie case, there are some funds that have gone towards that. But for these rural communities, like what I grew up in, if if a police officer gets shot in my community, they have to be flown to a trauma center. We don't have the capabilities to deal with large scale injuries. That's a helicopter ride.
Yeah, and it's
You
expensive.
take this money away from these communities that are in the middle of nowhere because let's face it, you can't really if you live in a city, you can't cost of living is insane.
Yeah,
And these touristy areas, someone has to live here to maintain these areas where people want to vacation, want to do all of these things. You know what happens at the ski resorts? People get hurt. People get hurt a lot. Average is like, you know, upwards of 12 deaths a year. People get hurt. People get hurt. You
yeah,
need to have healthcare in these rural areas.
right. The
Sorry, I have a cat crawling all over my desk.
But you're exactly right, and it's the thing that I keep reiterating to people is that all of the things that Trump brings up as problems are distractions, and everything he's done. Because what's the one thing I always tell you? The only thing that Trump got passed in his first term, right, was tax cuts for the rich, and
Hmm.
the one
And
of
for the uber rich, that
for the
didn't even affect me.
well, no, they did affect you. Do you remember the conversation we had about that?
Yeah, I had to pay more.
Yeah. So this is something I always want to reiterate because while yeah we can talk policy all day long, the issue is like getting people to actually vote and getting people to be engaged in the democratic process and the policy making. So one of the things, let's face it, especially before you got most of your news, politics information via TikTok or Instagram. If it wasn't a short that popped up in your feed, you weren't really looking at it, and there's nothing wrong with that inherently.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, but we just want to zone out, chill, doom scroll. Ain't nothing wrong with that inherently. But the issue is that people weaponize that, and they weaponize that by providing you false information. So when
Yeah,
you
you know who
were,
just bought TikTok?
oh God, don't even remind me. Oh, it's bad. Hey, so the not to get off track, but the when that bill passed, the tax cut bill passed back in I believe 2017.
Hmm.
You did not really pay attention to it because you were 15 at the time, maybe 14.
Something like that. I remember my parents stressing about it though.
Yep. And what happened was is Colorado at the same time passed a minimum wage bill increase. And what you
Uh,
did,
yes, I do remember that.
yeah.
That was Governor Jared Polis, if I'm not mistaken.
So
It was
what
either
you,
Polis or nah, Hickenlooper was gone by then. It was Polis.
but what you did was you correlated that minimum wage increase with suddenly you having to pay more taxes because you noticed when you paid more taxes and you saw more than likely on your feed the awfulness that is this minimum wage increase. Because like I said again, you're in that perfect demographic. You're young, you're somewhat middle class, you're white, and you fit into this demographic of people that they want to. You're a gamer, you're into guns, so that algorithm gets you. And what it does is it tells and it shows you like, oh, this awful thing is going to destroy the Colorado economy, blah blah blah, and you end up correlating some of that misinformation. But when the thing that I was very happy about is that when we actually talked about it, I asked you what year did that happen, and I was able to explain to you is that the reason your taxes increased was because the Trump administration got rid of a part of the tax code that allowed state people with state income tax to detract that income tax from their overall taxes, which Colorado being a bluer state tends to have a higher income tax. And everything that they do ends up affecting you on some level because
Yeah,
it's policy. If you don't fuck with politics, politics will end up fucking you.
of course. I mean, you've seen the memes, the people that are like, "Oh, I don't care about politics." Well, politics cares about you whether you want them to or not.
Have you seen
But
have you seen a lot of these farmers online, like a lot of them who voted for Trump, having to deal with his tariffs?
yeah, it's insane. I mean, the whole $2,000 stimulus check. You know how much a combine costs?
Yeah, no, I'm aware. It's ridiculous. What when we talk policy, who do you think party wise actually proposes decent policies? Because we can talk about like the likability of a candidate, one of them younger, right? I always tell people vote for policy. So which party do you think actually does anything policy wise to help the average American?
I mean, nowadays, nowadays it's the Democrats.
Yeah.
But if you look back in the past, the policies between Democrats and Republicans weren't crazy.
No, they weren't.
They weren't.
And
They were relatively tame. It's I hate to say it, but it's like the memes of, oh, it's going from zero to let's steal the Declaration of Independence over the course of what, 2 terms?
yeah. So you're actually exactly right. But what if I told you my current working political theory? I won't say theory, but ideology is that because Democrats have been. Before we get to that, what's your feeling? Have you seen this New York City mayoral election?
I think people are blowing it out of proportion, how they're saying, oh, there's going to be Sharia law implemented in New York City, or the mayor is going to mandate them to learn Arabic numbers. No, the mayor can't do that.
Well, we already learn Arabic numerals, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, I've seen those memes a lot too. That's it's hilarious to see, but it's also the
you're going to hear the
reason.
prayer calls in downtown New York, like Times Square. No, you're not.
Man,
The
the
world's going to keep turning. He's going to. I mean, I haven't read too much in his policies. The craziest thing I've seen is that he wants to make it like make you don't have to pay for your rent or some crazy statement.
so the specific thing you're talking about is he's proposed free bus fares, so buses are free, and then rent freezes. So you still have to pay rent.
That's the thing I'm thinking about. Rent freezes. But that means your rent's just gonna stay what it
Yeah,
is
which we've done at
when you
different
sign.
times. Yeah,
Yeah, and the free buses, amazing idea. However, comma,
Mhm.
however, comma, um, I where I grew up, there were free buses.
yeah,
And because they were free, that means anybody can get on them
yeah,
anywhere. It's great and dandy until, it gets dark.
yeah.
Then you get them questionable people that are just getting on the bus, going from, getting on the bus, hopping off real quick, meeting with the dude, getting back on the bus, and you know.
I get it.
So free
There's
buses, free public transport is, great, but there are some downsides to
No, of
having free
course.
public transport.
Of course. We can I want to talk more about this. I get so hyper focused on these certain things. But let's backtrack real quick. The reason I brought him up is one of the reasons that they've attacked him so heavily is because he represents this progressive aspect of the left. The ones that I argue that most Americans would agree with on policy. That the establishment Democrats tend to be, oh no, we don't want to do that because it's socialism. You mentioned that Republicans and Democrats weren't too far apart from each other. And I'd argue most leftists or most progressives, whatever you want to call them, would agree with you wholeheartedly. Is the fact that, especially after Ronald Reagan, the Democratic Party refused to push the envelope back to where it was in the 1940s or 1950s. Or even
Yeah, because I'm the worst thing to hear from somebody is I'm from the government and I'm here to help.
And that right there is what has been instilled and weaponized on the average American, especially the ones that are not as actively engaged in the democratic process, that, oh, the government is bad. And so when Democrats attempt to compromise or appease with Republicans, they ultimately water down their own legislation. let's increase healthcare for average Americans, or access to healthcare average Americans, but not too much, and we won't increase taxes too much on the richer folk to pay for it. And that fundamentally weakens their positions. So you get these half-ass attempts for things to go through to help some Americans, and because it doesn't help Americans fast enough or get widely distributed, you end up with an increase in that class disparity between those billionaires and everybody else. And that
Yeah,
is,
and I understand that problem. See, it's just like if that was a nationwide thing, understandable.
it is a nationwide thing.
But I mean, yeah, it is. But on the scale that I can't remember his name to save my life, the new New York mayor,
Mamdani.
the scale that he's proposing of doing it would work if it was nationwide. However, these Chuck Bass level billionaires are just gonna leave.
Well, that's so. A couple things about that is one, yeah, I agree, it would work nationwide fully. But two is the fact that the billionaires that quote unquote want to leave for the last 20, 30 years, all you see on Fox News when they talk about New York is billionaires, or they're going to leave, they're going to leave, they're going to leave. It's horse crap because one, they have their wealth and investments in New York City. Two, well, yeah, you're going to get onesies or twosies that might leave. You have businesses, infrastructure in New York City. There's a reason that these things exist in New York City. It is the financial capital of the world. It ain't going to change. They're not going to take all of that wealth and suddenly move it to Texas for a tax haven, especially not short term. And the money that that Mamdani would actually increase in taxes is pennies to these people. Like literally, and I want to fact check this because I don't know if it's 100% true, but Mamdani made up a good point when he ran from, and I apologize if I'm mispronouncing his name at all to the commenters out there. I'm god awful with names. But he brought up a really good point where he said that these people are spending more money on Andrew Cuomo's campaign than he would even tax them. It's not about the money. They could.
That wouldn't surprise me in the slightest.
No, Elon Musk is about to be a freaking trillionaire. Did you see that?
Oh, no, I didn't.
Elon Musk just got a pay package approved that would give him, I think, from Tesla stock, basically make him a trillionaire over the next few years. So, what do you think? Do you really believe that all of these people are going to like leave New York City because their taxes go up 1, 2, 3%?
Logistically speaking, it'd be a financial nightmare too. I mean, you thinking these guys have so much money, have so much fame, and well known that these Chuck Bass, Blair Waldorf level people are so stupidly rich from what they do in New York City. Leaving New York City and you go and, you know, post up in BFN, Indiana,
Yeah.
where no one knows who you are.
It's like they pay to live in New York City. It's a place people want to live. People tend to live in cities because of many different reasons. Access to jobs, and convenience. I tend to be I grew up in the rural South, but I tend to like cities a bit more because I don't like having to drive 50, 60 minutes to get anywhere I want to do something. What they want is for the average American, the average voter like yourself, to be scared of potentially doing these things that hurt them. Is again, ever since Reagan especially, we've had this income inequality become so god awful. And they have instilled this fear that you do anything, the government does anything. What you suggest when we've been having these conversations, that is deemed as socialism. That is deemed as communistic. That is bad. And they weaponize people's ignorance about it. The freaking tariffs are a way to move the burden of taxes onto the lower class, onto the poor folks, because that is easier to sell them on. It is easier to sell them on that fear of immigrants, of trans people, of all of this. They're going to take your guns, than it is to actually, you are being robbed and stolen from.
I mean, they're not. It'd be impossible to take our guns.
You get what I mean? That's what I'm saying. Is like they are selling you on a fear. Kamala Harris ran for office, and she never really talked about gun legislation. Or she herself.
Yeah, because if she did, it would be logistically stupid,
yeah,
or politically stupid
yeah,
to say we want to come take your guns.
exactly. But
Because you can't. There's 100 guns per citizen, or per person, statistically.
Yeah. And
It'd
that's
be impossible.
But that's the thing is it one, yeah, the logistics of it are asinine. But two is that no Democratic president or policy has ever like made meaningful impact on gun ownership like Republicans are suggesting. But they keep proposing this fear mongering because they want people to be scared. Like they make fun of California all the time. You can't own guns in California. And when I lived in California, there were plenty of people with firearms. They had different
Yeah.
regulations and rules for it. And yeah, some of them are annoying, some of them are a little stupid at times, and there's a lot of reasons for that. But what they are doing is they are selling you on fear. You know, the fear that, oh, Mom Donnie's plans won't work. So they'll just, all the billionaires will just leave New York City and he won't be able to tax anybody. And that way you get this idea that it won't work, so don't even try it. And they keep people in that sort of mentality. What do you think, Corbin? Because we're going to wrap up here soon. What do you think is the best thing for America to help itself go further? How do we get out of this hole that we're in?
Stop voting for idiots.
That's part of it. That's part of it. What can the average American do? What can you and I do to help promote that message, especially to like younger folks?
I think people need to be more educated on what's going on, because you got, like you said, you grew up very conservative. I'm sure they pushed what they believed onto you, and I grew up in a very blue area, and by all means, that was pushed on us through education and through just the community, because community. I think people need to stop being such yes men to everything. Yeah, well, more pushback from these lawmakers that aren't just to vote for a lawmaker that will not bend over and take it from the most powerful administration. Vote for somebody that will be like, no, no, we're not gonna vote for this "fuck you, I hope you die" bill. I don't want to die.
Yeah.
Because I mean, people are brainwashed these days. I'm sure you've seen the meme of how MAGA people will be like, "Yeah, Trump proposed the fuck me. He hopes I die. I support it. Fuck me." Like, no, we vote, do research, and vote for people that you truly believe are going to make a difference.
So that truly believe part, that's the hardest thing I think it is to get through to people. Because you look at, and I've talked about this a lot, you look at the specific policies. Democratic policies are widely popular. You know, Fox News does a poll all the time, and they'll show that even Fox News viewers support taxing the rich. Now, how do we justify that when you get the Trump administration that comes in and then cuts taxes for the rich? Is they are not being held accountable by their own voters. And that is decades of brainwashing. That's decades of media manipulation. That's decades of trying to say, well, both sides bad, so you might as well vote for the side that at least helps you socially or will protect your guns, or things like that.
Yeah, I mean, you gotta vote for the people you truly believe make a difference.
I agree with that.
There are gonna be some bad apples.
We will survive this mess, to survive Trump and get to hopefully a new Democratic administration.
I hope so.
What upbeat messages can we send out for a closing statement here?
Go outside, go climb a mountain, go hike.
As I always say, touch grass. It helps you reconnect with the earth.
Touch some grass.
There you go. All right, brother. I really appreciate you being on. Thank you for joining me for another episode of the Fireside Yaps, and I hope everybody enjoyed our conversation here today. Go ahead and give a good old goodbye to YouTube.